Hello, how you doing?
Bad for
Hello?
you.
Yeah, not too bad, man. Not too bad. You avoid the rain?
Sorry?
You managed to avoid the rain out of the shops?
Yeah, just.
Oh, no, that's lucky then. Yeah, so you're surviving the lockdown.
Yeah, it's not easy, but just doing what you have to do, I suppose. At the minute, it's get on with it or shut up shop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think, was that an option at any point? Was that something you thought about, given not for good, more sort of temporarily?
It was one of these things. Well, I wouldn't say that it ever crossed our mind to shut. It was one of these things that we either have to react to this or we're going to have problems.
Mm.
I mean, it's a difficult thing, the restaurant game. You know yourself. It's not easy, and we weren't at that position in the year. That's not our best time of year for this to happen, really. So it was a bit one of those, we either do something to keep going, or we're going to have a real problem on our hands at the end of it.
Mm. What have you managed to do to adapt? Because I see you doing deliveries and that as well, doing sort of kind of home meals now.
Yeah, so it's like a very, very minimal team. We had to furlough most of the staff and just keep on the ones that are sort of key to running the takeaway thing. So that was obviously a big thing from going from a team of about 8 or 9 people to 3, so myself included in that. So it was a kind of strange thing to seeing the place so quiet, But I think that we really underestimated how difficult the takeaway thing would be. You kind of thought, oh, you're on a fine dining restaurant, that's high end. Surely running a takeaway would be like no problem. Oh my God, how wrong are we? The logistics of it, because we're not using like a delivery service company.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing it all ourselves. I'm doing a lot of the driving, and I've got family just chipping in, helping out here and there. My brother, my mum, stepfathers, you name it. Just anyone who's got a car and a license without it.
It's a huge change especially from sort of one end of I think for I guess your kind of bistro restaurants and whatnot to go to takeaway, it's still a big jump. But to go from the complete opposite end of the spectrum with the fine dining aspect of it, where it's all about a customer experience, suddenly taking away almost all your tools for giving them the experience.
I've tried to look at it in a way where it's not that's not been taken away from us, and still try to look at it with a view that it is still all about the customer experience, So when you come to the restaurant, it's not just about food. It's you come in the door, the way you're greeted, the way you're sat down, the way the service is ran. So we've tried to take the same sort of way we look at everything and try to put it across the same way. So we spent a lot of time sourcing the right kind of containers, for instance. People are used to getting nice crockery with the Tabery brand on it. So we've managed to source some nice, because we didn't want to just serve it up in like a typical like plastic tub that you'd get from any takeaway,
Yeah.
So we managed to source these containers out of plastic. Actually, do resemble plates, or like they're round, so they actually look they look the part, They're really quite nice. You've disappeared. Are you still there?
Yeah, still here.
Okay, so your videos disappeared.
Oh, is it? It should pop back on in a minute. It's been a bit temperamental today for some reason. So you're still managing to deliver that.
Yeah, like I was saying, so we managed to find these these containers that are they're round like plates, and they're jet black, so they make the food pop quite nicely. Makes the colours stand out. So you're still getting that little bit of presentation that you'd expect from a meal at the Tayberry. So. Yeah. That was one thing, and also just the kind of way that we're handling the customers over the telephone, and just trying to make the whole thing slick. We've got a few things that we're going to be introducing in the next couple of weeks. Because obviously we've got the food side of it now, and we've got off sales anyway, so we've been able to still supply good quality bottles of wine to people, champagne, what people are celebrating. So it's still quite a lot of bottles of Piper Heidsieck champagne to folk. So the next thing is we do quite well with our cocktails in the restaurant. So we've been devising a way to to put them out to folks. So that's going to be up and running the next week or two. Doing them in like quirky little jam jars. So, the thing part of it was how do you stop a cocktail? How do you still make it look nice, not being served in something plasticky and nasty, still having a nice glass feel? How do we transport that? So I thought about a jam jar with a nice copper lid, so it kind of ties in with our branding, and put a little sticker on the front, and off we go. But we're not doing a big selection. We're doing 3 or 4 nice cocktails made by our sort of signature spirits that we get made for us by Newth Distillery. So we're just using them.
So you're kind of attacking the takeaway aspect with the same mindset you would go into any kind of restaurant that you're doing. You kind of the same thought process behind it.
Yeah. So it's, like I said, it's not just what you receive; it's about how you receive it. If that makes sense. So we get a smile at the door. We're making sure we've got our social distancing measures in place, but you put the stuff on the doorstep. You ring the doorbell, you walk a few paces for your meal, you would if you were at the table,
Yeah.
It'll give people that sort of level of service,
Yeah. So that's and you just started that. Was that just recently? Did you have a little bit of downtime to think about that and process it all, and then you've implemented it, or is it quite kind of off the cuff, just roll?
To be honest, right at the start of lockdown, we jumped into it. I was trying to do the best by this, not just for the restaurant, but also for the staff, as many as I could sort of help support. And like the team that we're using just now are the full timers, which are the bread and butter. They're keeping the place running. So I tried my best to keep them on full pay and start running this takeaway in order to do that. And so we had to jump and react straight away. So I think lockdown kicked in and we were up and running within a few days.
Yeah,
we're lucky enough we had a colleague of ours that's a bit of a tech genius, and managed to get us on, basically create a booking system for us. Which had a few hitches at the start, but we've got to grips with it now. And managed to just hit the ground running straight away, which was ideal because pretty difficult times that we were up against, and we just managed to pull it off, just everyone working together, which was great.
Yeah, I think it is especially sort of now more than ever, it's definitely a case of innovate or die, isn't it? It's kind of
totally,
which I think is you got to really push on. And it's a shame for those who haven't managed to find a way to innovate yet. Maybe they're still hanging on and waiting, but
I've got a friend of mine in Glasgow. I'll not mention who it is, but in case he doesn't want to be brought up, but a friend of mine in Glasgow who's great chef. He owns a little place out in Bearsden, a little cottage restaurant, and he's forever on the phone to me, asking my opinion on things and all that. And I think chefs generally are pretty good these days at sharing their knowledge and bringing other folk on and helping. And there's enough business to go around, even though we're in lockdown. If so more than ever, because people still want to get some sort of quality of food brought to their homes. So, we're helping each other out. I think any knowledge that can be shared at the minute is worth doing. So
definitely,
it's sort of what's the word, shell shocked by all this, like so many other people are, and we're just all working together to try and help each other out.
And where do you see it kind of? Because when you look at especially fine dining restaurants, once this lockdown is over, everybody comes back out again. I think there's going to be a huge economic sort of, or nobody knows, but there's an assumption that there'll be a big economic crash. Almost everybody will be kind of struggling a little bit, to be honest, coming out of it. Where do you think fine dining sits in that? Because again, there is that innovate or die, but it is a luxury.
There's something to be said about how this is going to be done, because I think there'll be people who really, really suffer during this, especially people who haven't been furloughed and have been made redundant. I think there's going to be a lot of folk that they don't have that disposable income at the minute. But there's also a lot of people who aren't so desperate and actually have got a decent income and are still earning well, and have got nowhere to spend it. So I think like always, there's people who really suffer and people who just thrive. in these kind of climates. So it'll be an interesting one to watch, whether the restaurants take a great big boom with people wanting, especially fine dining scene, and with people that are got the disposable income that want to go out and flash it and spend it because they've had nothing, all they've been able to do is sit on Amazon and buy things they really need. So
definitely.
So I think there'll be a little bit of both, to be honest with you. I think my personal thoughts are that it might be the lower end of the market that kind of suffers.
Yeah.
I think places that are sort of a bit higher end or a class a bit more of a luxury item, people will flock to because they'll be missing it. They'll be missing the treats that they usually treat themselves to. The greasy spoons in places that are, not necessarily serving the highest standard of food. You could go and get a fry up anywhere.
Yeah.
I think they might be the ones that suffer, to be honest with you, but we'll wait and see. It's
it is an interesting one. It's a definitely interesting. So moving away from that kind of, I've been doing these little podcasts now at the moment. It's been really tough to kind of stay away from that lockdown, coronavirus. You try to take your mind off it a little bit. So how do you, going back to what you're on about, kind of fine dining restaurants, you obviously two rosette at Taybury, the two. How do you find that? Was that always a goal, having that two rosette? Is that something you really pushed for, or was it a byproduct of?
I've been a head chef now for about 9 years, 5 of them with my own business. I think at the start when I was a head chef, working for somebody, not working for myself, I think it was all about the awards and the accolades. I think that's because working for a company, you don't see the financial benefit, if you know what I mean. So what other benefit do you get? The praise, the awards, the glory. So I think certainly when I was a bit younger, it was all about winning awards, winning competitions, how many medals can I get kind of thing. But since plunging into the world of business, it's had its highs and its lows. And not to sound, greedy or anything like that, but the bottom line comes down to it a lot now, especially when I've got a young family. So the goals, if you like, change, I would say, definitely. Where and the goals definitely change when you've got a young family, and it's more about a bit of security and things like that, making sure things are preserved for the future. But I think there's definitely something to be said as well for, as I've kind of grown as a chef and grown as a businessman, like, what do all these awards actually mean for your business? Does an extra rosette necessarily get me extra profit at the end of the year? No. Then do I need to make a lot of changes and more investment into my restaurant to get those extra chefs, extra staff, extra labour costs? Is that what's going to achieve me this extra rosette, which is not necessarily going to achieve me any extra financial gain? If anything, it might actually provide me with a financial loss. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm a little bit sort of opinion. If somebody thinks something's good enough for a third rosette, the way I run my business now, perfect. It'll come. It'll come. I'm not going to chase anything. The food style that we do at the table, the customers seem to be happy with. People come to the restaurant week in, week out, and there's no complaints in the way of what we do or anyone sort of recommending that we try, or we should really be doing this or should really be doing that, or we should be pushing for this. So I kind of just sit back and let these things happen now. If an extra rosette or Michelin stars or whatever, we got the Michelin recommendation, which was great. We're absolutely delighted with that. But pushing, I don't know if that's the right word. I think just keeping developing what we're doing, because we're always trying to make it better and tweak this, and could we get a new set of glassware or whatever, but that's more for us being happy with what we're doing, if that makes sense.
So the goals are more in-house rather than you kind of focus on in-house.
I think we've got a really small, close-knit team, and I think when a service runs extra smoothly and everyone's super happy with the standard and there was no issues and everyone got their drinks, nobody waited any more than 10 minutes for a drink, that kind of thing, and we know that we've nailed it, then I think that's the goals rather than how many badges are on the window. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that they probably kind of feed each other, when you've got, like you're saying, when people aren't waiting for drinks and that, and you kind of achieving your in-house goals, extra accolades are probably a byproduct of that. anyway. I mean, if you focus more on in-house, people are maybe more likely to get more accolades if you're looking at it in that perspective.
We've got a lot of regular customers as well. We got a lot of repeat custom, which we're blessed with. And the guy, I always say to the guys, you'll know by the tip jar at the end of the week, guys, if you've done a good job or not.
Yeah.
The guys keep all their own tips, so they know whether they've had a good week because they go home with that little bit extra pocket money at the end of the week. So
yeah,
it's one of them, that self-rewarding almost. You know what I mean?
And touching a little bit on that, like you're saying, you 24 when you opened the Taybury, was it 2015?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's that's a lot of pressure on a young, on a young chef. 24 is not.
23. Sorry, I was just about
23. That's.
We opened in November. My birthday's in December. And
I think very much by that point, really, by the time you were opening Taybury, you already very much set a standard for yourself. Like, for instance, I was in the catering community and everybody sort of knew, you're the guy that kind of knew you were head chef at Castle Hill. Dundee's first tour was at a restaurant, I think it was at the time. So you're really setting the standard in the town. And I guess when you were at Castle Hill, you must have been 23 at the time,
So I was 22 when I first came.
22 when you first. That's a huge responsibility. How did you cope with that?
Totally. So I mean, when we opened Castle Hill, as I said, I was employed there as a chef. I wasn't an owner or anything like that. But the way it kind of came around was I did a double whammy at Scott Hot. I'd won Young Scottish Chef of the Year and Young Scottish Seafood Chef of the Year on the same day, which was like at Scott Hot, which was like
it's a busy day,
bit of a crazy day, but I pulled it off and it was over the moon, and that really gave me like a big sort of PR boost. Personal sort of PR boost, and I got sort of attacked from all angles. People want me to do things a little bit overwhelming, and I was like, God, am I really bidding for this? And a lot of the offers were Edinburgh, Glasgow area, and the offer came up for this place in Dundee, which was a little bit closer to home for me, which I was always kind of trying to get a bit further down, back near home, which is Arbroath. And I kind of looked at it as an opportunity because there wasn't anyone else doing fine dining in the town at that point. It was all, somebody said to me when we opened it, it's like, fine dining, more like pen beans, no. So like, that's what Dundee.
That's expected, isn't it? Yeah, that's expected.
Change. So I mean, I think with I approached it with as much of an adult head as you can have at 22. The most difficult thing, I think, was probably try to demand the respect of older people in your brigade. Although you were the head chef, you're still that wee guy. You know what I mean? That's just kind of come out of the woodwork from nowhere. But I had big ambitions and sort of took the bull by the horns, and it just came with its challenges. But I just kept my head down and just kept working through it and developing and changing things. And the kitchen that I was provided to start off, I had to put my foot down fairly early on because it was almost dangerous to work in, never mind workable.
Really?
So, but yeah, 4 months into Castle opening, we had to take the money that we made so far and just refit that kitchen. It was bad. It was really bad. But we turned it around and got it all refitted with a beautiful induction suite and everything. Apart from we started off with a 6-burner Falcon Dominator stove, which on a Saturday night only 2 of the gases were working. So
that sounds like our place.
Honestly,
that sounds familiar.
It was a nightmare. So we changed things around, but I think one of the biggest challenges was wasn't so much the food. It was definitely trying to demand a certain level of respect from older peers, which took a fair bit of work. But we got there in the end, and eventually everyone got on board, and we ended up with 2 execs. But I think the challenge for opening up in Dundee was certainly how is the public going to take to this sort of fine dining thing. So what we did was we opened up with a fine dining menu, I think we did a 333 or a 444, and we had a grill selection as well because at the end of the day, it was like steak chips. So we had like a can't remember exactly what we had, but we had 2 or 3 steak cuts and then maybe a pork chop or something like that we did. And just simply serve with hand cut chips and simple garnish, pepper sauce and whatnot.
So what's your kind of stance on having that then, just while you're on about, having those 2 kinds of menus running? How do you, there's one thing that we kind of battle with in a lot of places I've been in, it's kind of almost trying to please too many people in a sense, there's a danger.
That you can try and grab too many bits of the market, but you've kind of learned over the years that you kind of have to do what you're good at and stick with it. So we eventually at Castle Hill, we ended up doing away with the grill selection because people took to the fine dining menu, and that was great. We just lengthened the variety on the fine dining menu, as long as there was some sort of beef dish there, whether it was slow cooked ox cheek or whatever, braised shoulder or something like that. As long as there was beef, people were happy. So when it comes to the Tayberry, we kind of approached it with I probably made a few mistakes, to be honest with you, when it probably took a bit more pride in what I was, not pride in what I was doing, that's the wrong way to word that, but a bit more sort of a pretentious eye on things, saying, no, I'm not doing all that kind of stuff in my restaurant. So it was very much focused on an 8-course tasting menu. And very quickly we realised that not everyone wants to come out for an 8-course tasting menu. So we had to adapt pretty quickly to that. So once a week now we do a steak club, because everyone seems to like the steaks. So well, it's going to change. It is currently the Tuesday night steak club, but we're going to be changing our open hours when we get back open then. So it'll now be the Wednesday night steak club. But so that people come down and they get a little taste of the restaurant. I think it's quite a good way to introduce people to a fine dining restaurant. They come in because they know what steak and chips is. They come in, they get steak and chips and a glass of wine or a bottle of beer for 25 quid, which is accessible for most, and people enjoy it. And then they think, oh, well, maybe we'll have a starter. Get a starter off the a la carte, and that gives them a little taste of what sort of fine dining menu is like. And then that's how we sort of pull in new customers as well. But so I don't really have a problem with having things like steaks on the menu, and we've kind of changed the menu to make it less pretentious and a little bit more people know what it is. Do you know what I mean? Or they can relate to the food a bit more. And we've definitely simplified it as well. From coming into Castle Hill and doing 2 rosette food, really pushing for a third, to actually realising what does the customer want as opposed to what do I want, has definitely been a learning curve over the past 5 years or so.
It's tricky to separate between.
It's really tricky to separate. I think a lot of chefs battle with that. But I think I've now found my sort of comfort zone where I know what my food style is. Do you know what I mean? It's taken a little while, but I kind of know what it is that I like to do and what I like to cook, and what I think the customers will appreciate. So yeah, it's been a journey to get there, if you like, but I think we're kind of there now.
Do you think that's something that just comes with experience, comes with the maturity of, maybe when you're younger, it's all about the dots and the microherbs, and it's all about trying to be as fancy and as possible to almost to impress yourself, really, And because
I think it comes with a really simple thing, and it's the realization that that food isn't all about how it looks. And I think as a young chef, definitely, particularly as a young chef, they don't eat what they're cooking. They read a book, they learn the technique, they learn how to make it look pretty, and they never actually sit and eat the bloody thing. You know what I mean? So I think that's why I put on so much bloody weight over the past 5 years. But, no, honestly, I think that's part of it, is the guys know how to make this, that, and the next thing, and they don't actually sit and eat the whole thing together. So they might know how to make the sauce that you've taught them, and they know how the sauce tastes. But have they actually sat down, had that sauce with a little bit of the meat and a little bit of the garnish, and God, does that all work together?
It's almost like a deeper understanding of the, how the food's put together at the plate. Everything's got to not just look nice; it's got to make sense. It's got to kind of, you got to eat it all in one go and think, it's got a pop for you. It's got to, it's obvious. Sometimes it's quite obvious. We do it quite a lot. We make a dish, it looks brilliant, we eat it, and it's just lacking something, and the sound just not there. You got to rework the whole thing and start again.
There's a chef that's kind of helped me out a lot through the years, Gary Watson. I don't know if you know Gary Gordon's restaurant in Keeler. Yeah, you know Gary. Gary sort of mentored me over the years. Well, actually, Gary helped me get into cooking, to be honest with you, my college lecture.
Well, I remember that's how I met him as well. He came in through Angus, through I think it was Jerry McMenamin.
Yeah.
Was the lecturer.
And then Gary was I was doing my first competition, and Gary went, "Adam looks brilliant. He's shite." So that was kind of words that these words that kind of stayed with me, and after that I've been like, yeah, okay, so not all about how pretty you make it look. Pretty pictures are one thing, but how it eats is definitely the most important thing.
Yeah, but I seem to find that the more sort of chefs I speak to, it seems to be the younger ones are all about illusions of grandeur. They want to see fancy food, and then you speak to the older guys, not even that old. You're talking 30. Not still well. At the start of their careers almost, and there's so much more about what's on the plate rather than how it looks. The flavors behind it, where it takes you.
But kind of.
Yeah, just where it takes you, it kind of almost starts as it's a feeling, it makes you feel something rather than just, look pretty.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sort of inspiration for the young guys coming out now. And some of it I'm like, yeah, that's great, that's really good encouragement, but some of it I'm a bit like, every single kid in the kitchen wants to cook a water bath now.
Right.
But can they roast a bit of meat to touch?
No.
They can't. I was brought up with quite a classical cooking knowledge. My original head chef was Paul Whitecross, who it was a restaurant. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, my original head chef, Paul Whitecross, who kind of took me under his wing. I was 16 when I started cooking in Edinburgh, and he was very much a classical cook, modern food, but all the sort of fundamentals were there. So I was really blessed to kind of get a good grounding with sort of classical French cooking background. Where I think a lot of that's gone now. Like the younger guys that are coming through, they want to know how to make a fluid gel. And you're like, yeah, but can you make casserole? And they go, what's that? Can you make bouillabaisse? What's that? Like all these classic French dishes, which like kind of give you the fundamentals of the basics. It's just like dying off. You say bouillabaisse, and they want to make it jump out of the pot. You're like, no, it's the classic fish stew.
It's amazing because we did a similar thing. Because we had a couple of chefs that were fresh out of college, and we kind of on a Wednesday night. It wasn't hugely busy on a Wednesday night, so we would almost have a little chef's night when we would sit and just go over things that are important in cooking, even simple things like the mother sauces. Having those mother sauces, and they didn't know what they knew. Them once you'd mentioned bechamel, they knew what it was, but there was a few of them they didn't know. And you're just out of college. Like, surely that's something. Do you think there's almost a fault there in the sort of education of young chefs?
I think so. Yeah, I think definitely from my experience at college to what I'm seeing young guys coming out with now, it's not okay. I had a guy, I'm not mentioning who he is, but I had a young chef who had been into 2 or 3 kitchens, still quite young. He's only about maybe 17, 18 or something like that. Just sort of an apprenticeship. Went did a year at college, and I said, like, once you've done your year, come and I'll give you a job. So fine, you could do the majority of the mise en place and all that kind of stuff, fine. And there was one, it was the 1st of January, because we opened up for a breakfast thing, and the hangover cure breakfast, as I was calling it, just like a posh breakfast kind of thing, nice fried duck eggs and that. And I said, go and stick me on 2 poached eggs, I'll get this out, you do that. And the guy went down trying to poach 2 eggs, went down, the whole section fell apart. They couldn't poach an egg, and I'm going, sorry, am I missing something here? What's happening? Why can't you do this? And it was just the basics of poaching an egg. He didn't know how to do it. I was like, surely you poach eggs in the house. He's like, no, I don't eat poached eggs in the house. I was like, so nobody's showing you how to poach an egg, and you've been a chef for what, going on 3-4 years now? Yeah, and the guy didn't know. So I said, right, that's it. So we actually had a bit of a back to basics time at Tabury, where my team was quite young at that point. I put the water bath, took it up to the house, so it was out the way. Water bath came away, all the fancy gadgets came away, and we went back to rattle and pans. And the first 3 or 4 services was really difficult because the guys, they just didn't know, and I was kind of shocked. I was like, so what happens when your water bath breaks? What are you going to do then? And it was like, get another one was the answer. I was like,
yeah, a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
I think there is that
so
kind of
back
lack
to
of
basics
that.
of it all. And I'm
I
glad
think
for it because
it's important. I mean, I got a lot of respect for college lecturers. Yeah, I know myself when I was I think we would have been at the same college, but it was, not everybody was there to be a chef. A lot of people were there because there was nothing else to do. So it's a really tricky. Yeah, I think so. I mean, out of everybody in my year at that college, I think only 3 of us have actually gone on to still cook. Yeah, everybody else is still. I don't even know how to.
My year group, I think if I remember right, there was about 20 of us in the year, and I think maybe 5 of us went on to do something. Maybe not necessarily fine dining, but catering of some form or in the food industry somewhere. I think maybe 5 of us. One of them actually went on to be what do you call it, like an environmental health officer actually, out of it, which is related but not the same. But yeah, about 5 out of 20, which is really crazy.
So it's tricky to hold the attention of that many kids, especially at that age when you're only 17 and 16, 17, maybe 18. Yeah. You don't know what you're doing.
I think you have to have a want to be a chef from not just something to do at college and I'll see how it goes. I think there's to be something a little bit more in there to make you want to do it. Not just because of the interest in what you're doing, but more for the sort of social demands that it has and the demands on your life that it has. That you need to care a lot to do it properly, I think.
So how did you stand on things like, I'm guessing your opinions probably changed a fair bit going from being an employee to an employer, going from, because there is this kind of mindset in the industry, chefs are overworked and underpaid, but not generally not treated very well. So turning that around to probably going through some tough kitchens like that yourself, having your own place now, you've got an opportunity to completely change the culture and flip on its head. Is that something that you've seen and actively do, I guess?
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes in the way I look at the industry. I've worked in Michelin star kitchens as well as 2 Rosette kitchens in the past, as well as restaurants with no awards that are pumping out big numbers. So I've kind of seen it all, I've seen a lot of different sort of versions outside catering companies as well. So, I've seen a lot of different things done. And I'll be honest with you, the higher up the sort of rankings into Michelin star restaurants, I found the worse the treatment got, which you would think that they're the ones that are pulling in, demanding high amounts of cash for the dining experience. There's loads more chefs. Surely it should be a bit simpler and more time focused. Absolutely not. I went through hell and back in one kitchen. Obviously, I won't mention who names or what, but it actually put me off the industry for a while. And I actually got to the point where I was looking to join the Marines. It kind of sort of smashed my dreams a little bit. Managed to pick myself back up and think, well, one bad experience, you can't just let that, crush you. But as a young laddie, I think I was 18 or 19 when I walked into my first Michelin star kitchen, and thinking it was all going to be amazing and wow, and it totally crushed me. And I was a bit not sure about going back into that ring, into another 1-star after that. So I kind of took that lesson quite hard, and I definitely now we don't have any sort of violence in the kitchen, screaming matches, chefs effing and blinding at waitresses. I can count on one hand in 5 years how many times I've actually had to shout in that restaurant.
See, when you say that out loud, it's almost, I get it because, being through the, similar, never Michelin star kind of kitchens, but hearing somebody say, having to actively point out that there's no violence in their workplace, it's such a I think it's a unique thing to the catering industry. I think anyway. I'm not sure.
When I keep telling stories of things that I've been through, she's like,
"You should have reported that."
And when it comes to pay as well, the restaurant can only afford to pay what they can afford to pay because of how high their turnover is and how their business works. So I understand that the pay necessarily isn't that great at certain levels for cooking, and it's just the way the industry is. We can't afford to pay massive wages to everyone of the restaurant wouldn't exist. So I think fair pay for the job that you're doing, but the fair pay can only be fair if the lifestyle is reflected to be fair, if that makes sense. So I think the whole 80-hour week thing, crazy 100-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks, we're people, we're not machines. You know what I mean? We need to come up with a better solution, which I think we have at the restaurant. And we're about to make even better for them when we go back. We're going down to a 4.5-day week. I'd make a better life for the guys working there, because they work bloody hard, and they work hard for me, and they work hard for the name of the place. I think it's only right that as the employer you kind of do the same back. You know what I mean? So I try to be as good with the guys as I can be. They need a favour, or chef, can I get a sub in my wages? There's never any problem with anything like that. We always make sure that they get what they need. Chef, my dog's died. Can I go to its funeral? Of course you can. We try
and sell them some canapes for a week and that as well.
Yeah.
Give them a good deal.
Baby bones.
So do you think you've really going back to the table? Do you think you kind of set a standard fairly early on? Do you think that's almost, there's been a bit of a spike in the last few years, with restaurants opening, Turo's, the Jimmy Scott over at Newport, for instance. Yeah. We got Dean Banks as well over at Har and whatnot. So there's quite, I know it's over in St Andrews, and I think so it's a bit further away, but there's kind of it's almost like you maybe sort of set the bar for local chefs.
Well, yeah, it's nice to be thought of like that, to be honest with you. It's not necessarily how I look at it, but I think it's nice to be thought of like that. Because people were kind of like, "Oh, Jamie across the water, that'd be competition for you," and I was like, because I was like, "Oh, my restaurant seats 36 people, and there's a population of God knows how many thousands and thousands of folk in Dundee, and however many thousand in Fife." I was like, I'm pretty sure Jamie sits 50 or something like that, I think. I said, so 50, 80, 90 covers roughly, and there's however many thousands, I'm sure we'll be all right. You know what I mean? I don't think we're fighting that much for competition. You know what I mean?
I think as well,
Jamie does a good job across there.
Yeah, at least, I mean, you share a lot of similar, like for instance, a brilliant view from both restaurants. You kind of have sitting right on the water, it's nice. But you have this, I've always thought of it like, if one's doing well, it's good for everyone. If more people are eating out and fine dining restaurants, that's good for everybody.
Yeah, so it's exposure for the industry. I mean, let's get people out of all these fast food chains and actually eating proper food. That's kind of my goal. It doesn't always have to be expensive as well. We introduced, it's probably going back to what we were saying about trying to grab all the custom. We introduced a cheaper lunch menu to try and pull people in that maybe didn't want to spend as much on the a la carte, as well as offering the a la carte menu. So, sorry, I'm going off point a little bit there, but
no, fire on.
I think having the steak club, having the a la carte menu, and having the tasting menus, and having the sort of cheap lunch, you could call it cheap lunch, sorry, the table d'eau menu. It's having enough variety without throwing too much ideas at people. Do you know what I mean? So it still sticks with the same concept of being upmarket, tasty food, but it's just giving them a few dining options, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because there's not a huge amount in there, especially in product fair. There's not I know Collinson's, Steve Collinson, he does a lunch as well, which is kind of that restaurant style food. But it's also comforting. I think he had a lamb's liver and a mash on at one point. It was delicious. It's so simple.
Yeah,
but
we kind of look at that lunch menu a little bit like that as well, there's so many like classic cuts, like you were saying, like lamb's liver is a perfect example. Like it's so cheap to put on the menu. People love it. And I think midweek lunch as well. Not to sound horrible, but you get a lot of the Blue Rinse Brigade in on a midweek lunchtime.
I doubt they'll be listening, so you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Say what you like.
So, but these older folk, they love all that. They love all these cheap cuts that you used to get in the war times. You know. We put ox heart on. We did like a trio of beef thing, and we put ox heart on with it. People were all like, "That was amazing. What was it?" It was heart. And then like younger folk were like, "Oh, really? It was tasty." But oh, and then you speak to the older clients, and they're like, "Oh, I thought that was what it was. I used to eat that when I was a kid." And blah blah blah. You're like, there you go. I mean,
I think it comes back to that thing of the plate of food that's in front of you, regardless of how it looks. It takes you back to something. You have an emotional connection to the plate. Whereas the younger person will eat it and be like, "Oh, that was nice. I'd rather not know what it was." And the older people are kind of, it's a memory for them. It evokes something more personal.
I think that kind of goes on to like the way you word things on a menu as well. You know what I mean? Like, so chefs like Tom Kitchen, for instance, are quite happy to write crispy pig's head on a menu, whereas I don't think my customers would necessarily appreciate that. So yes, we've done similar dishes like using a braised pig's head, but we maybe word it slightly different. Crispy pork fritter, something like that. I think that's definitely one thing that you got to watch it when you're writing a menu, especially. Another thing for young chefs, I think they want to be kind of outrageous as they can be to kind of draw a bit of attention to themselves, but is that necessarily thinking about the guest and what they want to eat, how they want to eat? Not so sure. You know what I mean? So
yeah, no, it's definitely a tricky one. Definitely.